Good morning, Art 1 class. Today I'm going to show you how to keep your proportions intact while you are learning to draw yourself. Beautiful proportions. And today, what's so important is to know the order in addition to the scale. So what that means is that up here is the top of the head, and down here is where the chin line is. So you always need to know where the top part, the highest point is, and the lowest point. In this case, the chin. We'll eventually talk about the neck and the shoulders, but for now, I just want to focus on the proportions of the head, the length right now. So if you have a mirror, it could be any kind of mirror, vanity mirror, mirror in the bathroom, maybe in your room, I suggest setting yourself up with a desk or some kind of flat surface, pencil and a paper. And if you can, I'd like you to print out this handout that I have. It should be on your Google Classroom that Miss Green shared with you. Why I want you to print this out, even though it looks nothing like you, is that it's nice to see how we deviate a little bit from these proportions. So I know myself that my nose might be a little bit shorter than what is represented as I look in the mirror. Likewise, some people's eyes, the space could be further away, give or take from the general proportions that are given here, okay? So this is a good exercise to do, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you how to look at yourself in the mirror based on this sheet. So I'm going to use my index finger and my thumb, and I'm going to ask myself, and you can do this again in the mirror, you can have your fingers likewise on the top of your head, on your actual head, and drag them down to the tear ducts, which is where the tears of the eyes are. And I'm going to keep that, that's my one proportion. This is what we learned in Art 1 about the bottleneck drawings, that was one neck unit long. So here I decided to use the top of the head to the tear ducts, that's the one relationship. And I'm going to keep those nice and steady. I'm going to drag that down to the tear ducts and to the chin, and that looks like it's a one-to-one. So my question to you, is that true with you? Yes or no? It could be a little bit more, it could be like your chin could come down here so it's a little bit less, or it could be a little longer, so it could be one and a little bit something. Whatever you do, you want to keep that knowledge useful so that when you actually have points, you're going to take the point. We just start with points first. We don't even draw any kind of shapes. We start with the point. I'm just using an orange highlighter. I know where my one is, so I'm going to mark out my one here and my one there. So I know exactly that's the chin. Imagine that's my piece of paper. You want to give about, we always do standard, about 1.5 inch, 1 to 2 inch guidelines so that we have a nice large size drawing. The next step that we want to ask ourselves is, what's the relationship between the tear ducts, which is right here, and the bottom of your nose, which is right where the cartilage is in between your nostrils. So I take that in the mirror. Again, I can start from the mirror. Have one finger kind of gently guiding your tear duct, and the other one nice and steady to where your cartilage of the nose is, and ask yourself, is this a 1-to-1 from the chin, like is represented here? 1-to-1, it's a different one unit, 1-to-1 to the chin. And if that's true, you would put, again, this dot here, which you already did. You'd find your 1. So if I know that's, say I know this is the distance, because I already know the chin, I already know the tear duct. So then you ask yourself, if that's a 1-to-1, what's half of that? You could do it that way, but what I usually do is I just take my index and thumb and I make sure it's consistent. 1-to-1. Like I said, it could be a little bit less. So that could be, if it's not a little bit less, then it was a little shorter, so you take the half and then you just bring it up a little bit. You can guesstimate there, and then your bottom of your nose would be brought up there. Okay, so now I know, so far I know the top of the head, check. I know the tear duct for the length. I know the length of the cartilage of the nose, and I know the chin. What's the next important feature that we haven't discussed yet? Well, it actually is the opening of the mouth, and I know this drawing here doesn't show too much of the bottom lip, but I'm going to draw that in there. So now what I want you to do with your finger, your two fingers, your index and your thumb, look in the mirror, go back to that space where you found in between the nostrils, the low cartilage point, and relax your mouth so that you can see the opening. You don't have to open it wide, but just relax it so you can see a little bit where the bottom, the top lip meets the top of the lower lip. So my other unit I'm gonna ask, is this a 1-to-1 relationship from the bottom to the bottom of the chin? Or is it a little higher if I use this? Does the chin come down lower, so it's like that and a little bit more? So then you might have to erase and bring the chin down just a hair. Or, well, we already know this chin, so maybe you actually bring it up a little higher. So if it's a little longer, you bring the opening of the mouth a little higher. That would make more sense since the end point of the chin is where this part is here, so it's all relative right now. Okay, so you actually want to bring up the opening of the mouth, bring it up here. Alright, so that looks pretty good in terms of just making marks. So right now I didn't do anything, I didn't do any ellipses, I didn't do any major lines yet. What is handy though is to always have a ruler. I do like using rulers in my classes. And using this ruler, the reason to use it is use it lightly draw, as you know. Okay, this face should be symmetrical to a certain extent, not 100% so, but you know, while there's symmetry in our face. And I'd ask you to put like a nice light guided line. I'm just gonna, you know, this is gonna turn like orange, but nice line there going through. What does that do? It helps kind of anchor everything in place, keeps everything kind of double checking. There's balance and symmetry as needed, and it kind of slows you down. One thing I always tell students is that it's so important to review your work as you go, especially when you're aiming for accuracy and observation. So what you're gonna do is just kind of see where those lines are, and then you're gonna ask yourself, oh, there's negative space here. I have little words here. There's negative space in between the eyes. So from here, this tear duct to that tear duct, would that distance be the same distance between one eye width? So I would look here in the mirror, hold that position, and then I'd do that directly in my eye. So the tear duct to the end of it, is it? Or is it a little bit less? So in this eye, it looks like it's tucked in a little bit less, so I bring that in. And is it true on one eye? Is it true on the other? Sometimes people have different size eyes. It's very subtle. But when you're observing in the mirror, sometimes you can see the slightest difference, and you want to just be true to yourself. For instance, I realized that my left eye hangs naturally a little lower than my right eye. So when I'm drawing that, when I'm dealing with the eyelids, I make that minor adjustment. It's something I didn't really notice before, but now that I observed myself a lot and drew myself a lot, you know, you realize these other visuals, accuracy about yourself. All right, moving forward is we always have these kind of, so if that's true, if that's 1-to-1, then you put the dots there. Then you kind of figure out what that is. Next step is to ask yourself, what's that distance between the corner of the eye and the side of your head? Okay? Is that less than this one eye width? And if it is, you tuck that in a little bit more. So basically just finding like key points. If I could say anything, the orange right now are just points. They're like, where's the highest north? Where's the highest south? Now dealing with the west over here on the east. Okay? After we do that, it's all just basic lines and shapes. So I already see lots of ellipses. I see lots of kind of movement of angles, of lines. And it's just about breaking up those simple shapes that make up the more complicated structures of, say, for instance, your nose. We'll go over that. As you guys had opportunity to work on your skulls, you might have noticed this. I know it looks like the person here looks very tired, but these are eye sockets. And they're so key. Because the eye sockets anchor everything in terms of the shape of your eye. You have your tear duct, you have the corner of the eye, you have upper eyelid, lower eyelid, you have your iris, you have your reflection of your eye, You have a lot that needs to be visually expressed and visually accurate. So, with that being said, I ask yourself, once you have that nice shape, which is very similar to what you drew, because that's the eye socket from the skull, is you have to ask yourself the eyebrow bone. It usually bumps up around here. And over here you see some basic shapes. Next step is the eye. The eye is more of a seed-like shape, so that tear duct is a little lower, that's a little higher. And then some people's eyes have the twofold, and they're more angled. And underneath here, and then you have the iris, which is about 1/8, 8 times the size of the pupil, which is a small black dot there. And then you usually have a reflection. One thing that's so important is to make sure that the lid falls over the eyeball. So even though we know the eyeball's a circle shape, you can't show too much of this up here. It has to be covered with the eye lid. It's good that you had an opportunity already to practice your eyes just by looking at your eyes to see the more complicated and complex anatomy, so that when you are organizing your drawing for proportions, you'll feel more confident going in, as long as you know where the proportions are, the distance between the eye socket and where they are in location, to now say your nose. So the nose has complicated shapes, but if we simplify it, and I want you guys to look at the nose as I talk about this, is that there's a ball of the nose right here. This is the tip. Everyone's is different. Some really is a ball, some are more like a trapezoidal shape, but that's the tip of the nose, and that's one shape. Then you have the nose bridge, which is the front part of the nose, and that's a second shape. And then you have that cartilage that hangs over. Some hang out a little bit more. Then you have some dark shapes in the nostrils, like more like inverted commas, it's more or less. Some might be more circular than others. And then you have some cast shadows on the side. So over here is a little bit of cast shadow, but this is where the nostril, the side of the cartilage comes out. That's the side of the nose, as well as this is the side of the nose. That's another shape. And then you have the side of the bridge, which is so important because it's a little bit more structure, visual structure. So the importance here that I really want to promote is discussing the many shapes that make up the form. It's so important. A lot of the times most kids just do the front part. They have the nostrils and they have here, but they forget the side of the nose. And last but not least is the philtrum. This is like if you had a mustache. This is the distance between the upper lip and the cartilage of your nose. What's that distance? We asked, is it 1 to 1 there or not? It could be a little bit higher, it could be a little lower. Another thing you want to double check is you had some nice grid lines, because we want to imagine really gridding up the portrait. In a way, you have to mentally put this through, and you can get a straight edge and put this in front of your face and see where your mouth, the side of your mouth naturally relaxes. What part of the eye does it hit? Then you know how wide your mouth is. If you kind of figured out where the eyes are and they look accurate, then you could drag that up and see. Another thing to double check too is this part here. It's called the cupid's bow. Some are more prominent than others. Some could be a little bit more even. This one looks like more like a V-like shape. It comes up and goes back down. Everyone's is unique and different, and just take the time to observe. So that just look at the upper lip right now. And now, after you do that, look at the lower lip. Which one's thicker? Lower or the upper? My lower lip's thicker, so let's have to make sure there's a little bit more width there. And last but not least is thinking about your chin line. So what I want you guys to do for exercise is get a straight edge. It could be a pencil, it could be a ruler, but you're gonna look at your chin right here and see how wide it can be. None of the chins come to a direct point, but there's always a difference in terms of width. Then I want you to take your angle from this side and see